Stephen Weatherly is returning to the Minnesota Vikings on a one-year contract worth $2.5 million, where the Minnesota Vikings have brought him back. Our seventh-round draft pick out of 2016. And if you actually look at the 2016 draft, the two best draft picks we had was Stephen Weatherly and Jaron Kearse, two players who we lost to free agency last year after their rookie contracts, and both were drafted in the seventh round. And they were our two best draft picks out of that draft class. So you look at this 2018 draft class, or this 2016 draft class for the Vikings, it was not a good draft, but Rick Spielman can hit on the seventh round draft picks. And this is something you see not only in the 2016 draft, but in all of the drafts. Rick Spielman loves to trade down. He likes those sixth and seventh round draft picks where, although as fans, trading down and just stacking up on sixth and seventh round draft picks, usually they don't even make the team. But in all honesty, it has worked out. And you can say what you want about Rick Spielman. He's very good when it comes to draft day. He is a mastermind. And that's the most important thing, is who you draft when you draft them in the draft. Well, although he's not great at drafting offensive linemen in the first couple days of the draft, he really can hit on the sixth and seventh round draft picks. And just Stephen Weatherly is just one out of multiple seventh round draft picks, sixth and seventh round draft picks, where he hit on them. And in that 2016 draft, the two best players were drafted in the seventh round. So I really trust him when it comes to draft day. And this year, with all the needs the Vikings have, we will see him trade down a lot with all the needs that the Vikings do have. But I really do want to see, I don't want the Vikings to trade down. I know we don't have a second round draft pick, but with that 14th overall pick, there is so many core starters you can get. Just imagine if the Vikings got Christian Barmore. And I've said it a lot, and I'll say it again. We need Christian Barmore. Now, honestly, right now, we don't need Kwity Paye as much as we thought. But once again, if he's there at 14, how do you not take him? There's a lot of players that are there at 14. And although a lot of people will say, and you can argue that the Vikings should trade down without a second round draft pick, although they do have about 10 draft picks in this next draft, I believe 10. I might be wrong on that. I might need a fact check, but I think the Vikings do have 10 draft picks in all of the 7 rounds combined. Whereas I don't think trading down is the best scenario. I think drafting Christian Barmore, maybe Rashawn Slater, someone who can really help out this Vikings team and make an immediate impact in the NFL. So all in all, Stephen Weatherly coming back with the Vikings. How will he come back? Now if we take a look here, this is his 2020 stats. And he didn't have the best season. Now, Stephen Weatherly played 4 years with the Minnesota Vikings, 2016 through the 2019 season, where he played pretty well. I mean, he was a backup to Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin. And when Everson Griffin he wasn't injured, but he did opt out for a lot of the 2018 season with mental illness stuff. And I think it was that. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere along that lines. Stephen Weatherly did step in and he looked pretty good. He did rack up 3 sacks that season. But if we look at last year where he played with the Carolina Panthers, he started 9 games in the NFL where he racked up 17 total tackles. I say that like it's a lot. 17 total tackles, not a single sack, and 1 tackle for loss. I mean, this is a bad season. If you're a starting defensive end in the NFL, you've played 9 games, and you only have 17 tackles, no sacks, and a 1 tackle for loss, he did not have a good season at all. But him coming back to this Adam Zimmer is one of the best defensive coaches. Him coming back to this defense, now he also knows Danielle Hunter. Assuming Danielle Hunter does come back and looks good again, he knows Shamar Stephen. There's a lot of veterans that we do still have on this defensive line. Yes, it's not the defensive line we saw in 2017 or 2018, but it is still a pretty solid defensive line. I mean, people will argue that it's not, though. You look at this last year, Vikings were dead last in pass rush. People will say our defensive line is bad, but say Danielle Hunter comes back and looks like the Danielle Hunter we used to love and see. Say he comes back and he is Danielle Hunter. I mean, the whole NFL, Vikings fan, we haven't forgot, but it seems like the entire NFL has forgot how good Danielle Hunter really is. He racked up 29 sacks in the last couple years that he played. 29. I mean, Danielle Hunter is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And if he comes back and looks as good as he looked in the 2017 or 2018 or 2019 season, any of those 3 seasons, this Vikings defense could be complete just based off of that. Of course, we want to see Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr healthy as well. Those are 2 massive pieces on our defense. But if our defensive line, we have Danielle Hunter come back. Shamar Stephen, I can't say, it doesn't matter if he comes back or not. Okay, it doesn't matter about Shamar Stephen. Michael Pierce saying he doesn't opt out another season. I mean, the Vikings defense is not as bad as people think. And of course, I don't think Stephen Weatherly is a starter. Now, he is going to start the 2021 season, but I would hope that either DJ Wanham, Afadio Denebo, Hercules Mataafa, he's another one that they rotate in, hoping one of these people do somehow transition into the starting role, being a starting right defensive end alongside Danielle Hunter. I want to see that happen. Now, I wouldn't expect it to happen just because of how Rick Spielman and Adam Zimmer, they don't like pushing players. They don't often push players into the starting role. They need that transitional, and that's what Stephen Weatherly is going to be. Stephen Weatherly is a veteran player who is going to be a transition, hopefully, into DJ Wanham. DJ Wanham is going to be a sophomore year, second year player out of South Carolina, 4th round draft pick, and I expect him to be a starter in a couple years. Now, once again, that's high hopes. Of course, a lot of people won't have high hopes on a 4th round draft pick, but I would expect him to be a starter some line down the road. So if we take a look at this Stephen Weatherly contract, it's a 1-year contract worth $2.5 million, where he also has $500,000 of incentives, meaning if he racks up 3 sacks or more, he will get a $500,000 bonus. And I love incentives. I love it because a lot of players don't always care as much as winning. You see this defensive ends, I mean, you kind of do see this, but it's especially in wide receivers where they want their numbers up. Winning is not everything for them. They want the money. They play for the money. And I can't say that about Stephen Weatherly, but I can say that a lot about a lot of other players in the NFL where they play for the money. And if you put incentives on the line where they play good and they get extra bonuses in money, they get paid more and it gives them more of a push to play at their best. It pushes them to their full potential. And hopefully we see this with Stephen Weatherly. Not saying he's one of those players. I'm just saying I love incentives because just for that reason. Adjusted cap space after the Stephen Weatherly contract, Minnesota Vikings have $2.5 million in cap space. So yeah, if the Vikings want to bring back a lot of these players, giving Harrison Smith another contract extension, bringing back Eric Wilson, these are some players that they might have to cut. And Rick Spielman has already hinted at it that Kyle Rudolph's not the only player they're cutting. He said he's just one of many. Well, he hasn't said it verbally. Well, yes, he has. He kind of has. He's hinted as it that Kyle Rudolph was not the only player they're going to cut. And of course, there's other players that need to get cut. So these are potential cuts for the Minnesota Vikings: Dan Bailey, Britton Colquitt, Drew Samia, Shamar Stephen, Anthony Barr, and Jalen Holmes. Now, you take a look at it, though. There's no reason to cut Anthony Barr or Drew Samia at this point. Before June 1st, if you cut them, they're worth too much in dead money. Also, Drew Samia, you're only paying him $665K. I mean, there's no reason to really cut him. Yes, he had a terrible season, probably the worst season we could have asked from Drew Samia. But once again, it is his second year in the NFL, and by the end of his rookie contract, you should have cut him by then if he continues to look this bad. But I would give him one more year left of a shot. And Anthony Barr, though. Anthony Barr is one of those players where, with Eric Wilson, Anthony Barr is not worth the money that we are paying him. Anthony Barr is making way too much money. And if you cut him now, it wouldn't make any sense. He'd be worth more dead money than he would in the cap that you'd be getting back. But if you cut him after June 1st, it would save us $12.4 million in cap space. 12.4. And yes, that would obviously let us bring back Eric Wilson, and then we could also move that money to possibly one of these offensive guards. Now, if you cut him after June 1st, of course, Brennan Sheriff, Joe Thuney, you won't have an option on one of those players, but maybe someone else will come up. Maybe there'll be another option for the Vikings to have. But these other players you can definitely cut right now, especially Shamar Stephen, who, because the Vikings are bringing back Stephen Weatherly, Shamar Stephen now, there's a lot of defensive tackles out there, and the Vikings should cut one of them. Jalen Holmes is not a defensive end. Yes, he played defensive end this last season because they traded away Yannick Ngakoue. Stephen Weatherly was gone. Everson Griffin was gone. You needed defensive ends out there. And then, of course, Danielle Hunter's injury. Our starting defensive ends were Fadio Denebo and Jalen Holmes, both of which did not look like starters last year, and now are going to be backups this next season, which they should be because after a season like that, you have to be backups. But Jalen Holmes, he shouldn't even be a backup defensive end. I mean, he was drafted as a defensive tackle to be a defensive tackle. And for that reason, giving Jalen Holmes another shot, I definitely would be all on board with that. Of course, he has one more year left on his contract. If he does not look good, you can cut him midway through the season or at the end of the season. So bringing Jalen Holmes back and not bringing him back, just not cutting him, keeping Jalen Holmes on the roster might be a good idea. Now, Shamar Stephen is a lot better than Jalen Holmes when we look at it right now. But Shamar Stephen has already hit his ceiling with the team. We've already seen what Shamar Stephen can do. We've seen what he can do at his best. We have not seen what Jalen Holmes can do as his best, as an interior pass rusher. Because we haven't seen much of this. We saw this a little bit in 2019 season, but we didn't see this in a long time because they used him as a defensive end. Both Jalen Holmes and Fadio Denebo, in fact, look like interior pass rushers. They're too slow to be defensive ends. They can't even rush the passer. And a lot of it has to do with coverage grade as well, because Minnesota Vikings, when there's an open player and you're rushing the passer, well, they're going to throw to the open guy. They're going to do the quick check down pass. You need better coverage, obviously, to rack up sacks. So there's a lot of defense that you can give to Jalen Holmes and Fadio Denebo, but once again, we can all admit they're not starters. And for that reason, it was a great move for the Minnesota Vikings to bring in Stephen Weatherly to be alongside Danielle Hunter and hopefully transition into DJ Wanham, who might be our starting right defensive end in a couple of years. Because DJ Wanham had a very good rookie season. For a 4th-round draft pick, he had a very good rookie season. Cutting Shamar Stephen, although he might be loved by the fans, it might be a good move. Because, in fact, if Michael Pierce comes back, there's no reason to pay Shamar Stephen this kind of money. And you look at it here. It saves us $3.75 million. This can be moved somewhere else, somewhere more valuable than Shamar Stephen is giving us. Because, I'm sorry, I'll say it, Shamar Stephen is bringing nothing to the table. Not $3.75 million worth of value to the table, I can tell you that. If he's not going to be starting, just cut Shamar Stephen. Because as a matter of fact, if Michael Pierce comes back, Vikings draft maybe Christian Barmore, I don't know, some defensive tackle. Shamar Stephen is a backup. You should be rotating in James Lynch, giving him more snaps. You should be rotating in Armon Watts, Jalen Holmes, maybe Afadu Denebo if you move him back on the inside. These are the guys who should be rotating in because they're going to be with the team a lot longer than Shamar Stephen. They're going to outlast Shamar Stephen. So if Shamar Stephen's not going to be a starter, just cut him. I mean, he's getting paid this kind of money and you can move this money somewhere else. These are players who you should definitely rotate in. I would like to see more of Jalen Holmes. A lot of people will say they saw enough. I saw enough of him as a defensive end. I would like to see Jalen Holmes play as an interior pass rusher. I would like to see Afadu Denebo try as an interior pass rusher. We saw it a little bit when we had Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter as our duo, and it looked okay. He is a restricted free agent right now, so the Vikings can decide what they want to do with Afadu Denebo. They're going to bring him back. I mean, I can tell you that right now, but once again, if they don't want to bring him back, they don't have to. Which wouldn't make sense because you can underpay Afadu Denebo easily because he's a restricted free agent, so you can decide what you want to do with him. So anyways, the Vikings bringing back Stephen Weatherly, how will this impact the team? Yes, our adjusted cap is a lot worse now. After cutting Kyle Rudolph, the Vikings had about $5 million in cap space, which is still a lot worse than you want to have, especially going into this first wave of free agency where you have players that you need to pay. After losing Dakota Dozier, which, again, it doesn't matter if we lose Dakota Dozier. Well, we are going to lose Dakota Dozier, but we need starters at the offensive guard position. And also, Brett Jones and Rashad Hill are free agents right now. Brett Jones and Rashad Hill looked great as offensive linemen. They're amazing depth pieces on the Vikings offensive line. Brett Jones was the best offensive guard in 2020. Rashad Hill looked good as a backup left tackle and a backup left guard or right guard, wherever. So, we have a lot of depth on the Vikings offensive line. We just need core starters. And at this point, with this cap space, Vikings need to do more cuts. Of course, cutting Dan Bailey, Britton Colquitt, Shamar Stephen. These are players you can cut and then pay an offensive guard. This is going to have a domino effect. It is. Because now the Vikings aren't going to bring back Everson Griffin. Maybe trading down if Kwity Paye is still available. Someone will trade up. There's a lot of domino effects that come off of just a free agent signing like Stephen Weatherly. Who is, I think, it hasn't been announced, but I do believe he is going to be the starter. He is going to be the starting defensive end. Even if Danielle Hunter is back and we have Afadu Denebo back and DJ Wanham's looking good, knowing how Rick Spielman operates and how Mike Zimmer likes to run this defense, he will be our starting defensive end alongside Danielle Hunter. And I can't say I'm mad because, well, I'm not mad. I can't say it's a bad thing because if he's a transitional piece into DJ Wanham, because he is a veteran on this Vikings defense that is very young. Vikings defense is very young, and he's a veteran that we can bring on this defense and really develop these guys. Look at what Harrison Smith has been doing for these cornerbacks that are all under the age of 26. You can bring in Stephen Weatherly and try to do the same thing with this defensive line. And it's going to be interesting to see it all unfold, but it's going to have a domino effect. I really hope what happens is that he does have a pretty good season, but I only want him to be here 1 year. I only want him to be here 1 year because if he's only here 1 year, that means DJ Wanham is ready to be our starting defensive end alongside Danielle Hunter. Hopefully Shamar Stephen is cut by then too. Because if Shamar Stephen is cut by then, that means we have another defensive tackle who's ready to take the starting role. If that's our 4-3 right there, that might solve all the problems on defense. I would only expect Stephen Weatherly to get 7 sacks max. I wouldn't expect him to be Actually, the more I think about it though, if he's a starting defensive end alongside Danielle Hunter applies the pressure, brings the quarterback on his side, he can rack up the sacks. Not max 6 sacks. I take that back. Max like 20 sacks because, okay, well, 20 is that's definitely pushing it. But I'm saying if you're alongside Danielle Hunter, he's pushing the quarterback to your side where you can rack up all the sacks in the world. He might be our best. He might have the most sacks in 2021 because of Danielle Hunter. If, of course, when I say this right now, we're assuming that Danielle Hunter looks as good as how he looked the last 2 seasons. And it doesn't happen very often. Danielle Hunter hasn't played an entire season in the NFL. He hasn't even practiced an entire season. I want him to, and I hate to be that person, but I don't know if he's going to come back and look like the Danielle Hunter we used to love and see. Hopefully it happens. Just don't know if it's going to. Let me know what y'all think.